Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 253, and this was recorded right before Christmas. I sat down with Kate Hasting and Josh Beale of Hasting Company. Of course, when I say sat down, it means I Zoomed them, but you get the idea. Josh and Kate and I have been friends for a really long time. I'm super happy to have them on the show. They've been through some intense couple of years. Kate lost her father unexpectedly in a car accident, and Josh lost his father after his dad's long-time battle with cancer. They were open and lovely about the conversation, really revealing a lot of their pain and their struggles and their accomplishments and their achievements, and it was a great human conversation. I asked them to send me one of their new singles, and I am going to put that into the episode so you can hear a little snippet of what they do. They're super talented and lovely people. They're a kick, and I love them dearly. So I'm excited for you to hear their story and hear about them and hear a little bit of their music. Okay, in other news, I finally sent out the mailing list that I've been talking about for probably months now. If you signed up for the mailing list on susanruth.com and haven't seen it, it means it's in your spam filter, because I'm on my own mailing list just as a way to keep track of things, and it was in my spam filter. So apparently if you send yourself mail, it's not really you or something. Yeah, and if you haven't signed up for the mailer, again, do that at susanruth.com, and you'll get the next one, unless it's in your spam filter. And then I don't know what to do. Rate and review Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Super helpful. It helps buoy the podcast up and through the ranks of the very confusing, and I don't know how the algorithms work, but somebody somewhere is pushing all the zeros and ones, and the more you rate and review, the higher up in the pile the episodes and the show itself go. So please do that. Check out heyhumanpodcast.com for the links page. Every episode gets a pile of links that I curate specifically to help you find more information about my guests and things that we talk about, books and articles and whatever, random thoughts we may have. I try and go and search out things on the web and put them all in one place for you to make it easier. You can email me, susan@heyhumanpodcast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you or someone you know has an interesting story and you'd like to be on the show. Let me know, because I read all my email. I even go through my spam filter, obviously. Also on heyhumanpodcast.com is the storefront. So if you are thinking to yourself, I really need a Hey Human t-shirt or a tote bag or something like that, that's your place to go. It's safe and secure, and it helps support the show, and I really appreciate it. Again, susanruth.com is the place to sign up for the mailing list and also learn more about me and the other things I do, my music and my artwork and that kind of thing. My social media, Hey Human Podcast, is on Instagram and Facebook. And my personal social media is Susan Ruthism. So pretty easy to find, really, I think, at this point. If you're into music, you can find me under Susan Ruth on iTunes and Spotify. So definitely do that as well. I think that's all I got as far as the busy work stuff. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling people about the show. And be well, stay safe, take care of each other. Here we go. Yay, there it is.
Oh my God, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right.
Sorry, it's literally like shit show central over here.
No, I love it. Hi.
And we are here and excited about being here.
Yay, I'm so glad. You had to tilt the camera up just a hair so I can see both of you. There you go. So good to see you guys.
Oh my God, I miss you, and I love your bookcase in the background.
Oh yeah, all my books. Kate Hasting, Josh Beale, welcome to Hey Human. I'm so excited that you are on the show.
We're so excited.
Yeah, we've been wanting to do this for a while.
We have known each other, how long now? A decade? Has it been that long? It feels like forever.
I think I met you when I was 17 or 18 or very early, very young. You and I first crossed paths. At least I saw you play, whether we met or not. I remember you were writing, and I was so into like the female songwriter thing. That was what was eventually going to get me here. So we would always come and watch like the O'Sheas and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. That was back in the beginning of my Nashville era.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, those were the days. Those were the days. So where are you hailing from at this very moment? Where are you?
We are still in Nashville. Josh leaves the 26th.
I leave on Tuesday.
Yeah. And I leave, I was trying to leave tonight, but with the great COVID debacle, I have to get a test before I can be around my mom. And that's proving to be a little more challenging than I thought, which I assume everyone had the same idea as me, get a rapid test right before you go home.
Yeah.
So joke's on me. Well, Josh already had the vid.
I had the vid about 2 months ago. So
how was it?
Fun. Not fun. It wasn't as bad as other people have had it. I didn't really lose my taste or smell. Like things tasted a little blander, but it didn't last. That part didn't last too long, but I had like fever for a few days and, cough and shortness of breath and that stuff. So it wasn't a peach of a time.
Right.
I had it back in January before they knew what was going on. And, which makes sense because I travel so much in New York and California and Nashville and Seattle, those are pretty hot spots, and, honestly, I mean, I couldn't get out of bed for 10 days. I just slept the entire time. I didn't eat anything. I just was out. And then the worst part has been the 10 months after. I'm finally on the mend now, but I mean, I'd never in my life needed an inhaler, and I needed an inhaler every single day. I was puffing on that thing 8 times a day just to get through the day for 10 months after being sick. And then my hair fell out, which is finally starting to grow back, like little spots of almost
I've heard the hair thing a lot, actually. Yeah. A lot of people have been talking about that just randomly on Instagram and stuff, which I had no idea was like a thing, but it's so hard on your immune system that obviously like that's highly connected to hair growth and your collagen reproduction. But I was just like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm. It's called shedding. And apparently, and it would be like, I would be sitting there and I'd pull on my hair and just piles of hair would come out. I thought, oh shit.
Oh no.
The other day I was cleaning my bathroom and I thought, I haven't cleaned out the drain for a while because I have a hair guard on it. This is way too much information, but I unscrewed the
Honestly, I don't think it is because this whole hair loss during COVID thing has been fascinating me for like days. I've been on this topic.
Swear I grabbed a coat hanger and unfurled, a dry cleaner coat hanger, unfurled it, took the plate off of the drain and stuck that coat hanger down. And I pulled up a monster worthy of Sesame Street, just put googly eyes on it. It was this heinous giant hair bomb. Oh, it's so disgusting.
Like if you're a girl, that doesn't bother you, but he's over here like crying a little.
Yeah, retching.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been dealing with my roommate does not clean out his hair from the drain.
Oh, he just burned his roommate on a podcast. Wow, with friends like those.
I've been dealing with that and unclogging the pipes multiple times a year.
Oh yeah,
so.
Unclogging the pipes, whatever that means.
So I lived with my best friend Ellen in Seattle years ago, and I remember when we first moved in together, I would hear this strange whirring noise out of the bathroom, after she'd shower and stuff. I was like, what the hell is that? After she'd dry her hair and stuff. And she's like, oh, it's my little vacuum. So she would vacuum up. And of course, I drove her insane because my hair would come out and she would be like, get your goddamn, she wouldn't say goddamn, but you know what I mean? She'd be like, she'd not be pleased with me. So so I was like, oh, I'll start using your vacuum. She's like, great. So I have one in my bathroom now. They are so handy.
That's actually really genius. And sounds like something my mom would do because my mom lives back at the farm I grew up on in Ohio. And it's just like, for a farm, it is very clean. She's like the mom that goes behind you and cleans up everything. And you're like,
picks up the crumbs after you.
Yeah. And I'm trying so hard in my adult years to not be the reincarnation of her, but it's crazy how that is just so inherent now. I've broken parts of it, but like I see myself doing it to people and I'm like, whoa, I am what I hate.
Yeah, she's a mamba. It's like a Roomba, only it's a mom.
A mamba. That
Wow.
is her. Wow, coin it. There you go.
Especially since she rolls around.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He just made fun of my mom being handicapped.
Yeah, I caught that. Let's go back to the beginning of you two. So you grew up in Ohio. Josh, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Wisconsin, just west of Milwaukee.
All right. And how did you two, well, okay. Were you both musically inclined as kids?
I was definitely theater inclined, but I was just so weird. Like, I think I was just like the girl playing guitar, writing songs, but at that time it wasn't like this is what I'm destined to do sort of thing. I was just in a ton of theater, but I was really, really, really big into 4-H and FFA. And it just like, now it all makes sense why I wasn't cool. But then it was somehow like I think I'm a decently intuitive individual. And it's funny that my entire life I couldn't figure out why I wasn't really ever just like really in high school. And now it's like the very things that made me so very odd in high school are kind of starting to work for us musically. But I don't even think I was musically inclined. I just really liked writing. You, on the other hand.
Yeah, my parents put me in music classes starting at 18 months old. So
I know, right? Like everyone like takes a gasp when you hear that.
And of course,
so you're like an 18-month-old playing a trombone.
tuba. Yeah.
Put that on the top.
Yeah. No. It's the stuff you'd expect, like moms with kids sitting in a circle, like counting out rhythms and marching and stuff. Like it wasn't anything, super amazing at that point, obviously, but it laid the groundwork. And then when I was 5, my parents told me a long time ago that they always wanted to have music in our lives. Like they made a point of it from when my sister and I were really young. And so when I was 5, I started playing violin and played that for about 3.5 years and got like really far in the program that I was, I guess I caught on really quick. But then I guess I started insulting my teacher when I was 8 years old, telling her how much I hated classical music and didn't like any of the music she was making me play. And so eventually I quit, and my parents told me, you cannot just quit music, you have to play an instrument. And you could choose anything except drums.
Every parent says that.
And so I made we started looking around, and I decided on guitar. And my parents were very conservative growing up. Were not a big fan of rock at all. And so they bought me an electric guitar and an amp combo, but I had to sign a contract with them at 9 years old, with like initialing each item on 2 pages, saying, how often I would practice, and that I would continue occasionally practicing violin and having like bi-monthly meetings with my old teacher and whatever. And then what was it? There's an item that was like, Josh will learn flamenco, blues, jazz, like a whole list of genres. And then the very last one was, Josh will not play rock music.
Like a little bit of this story comes out on every time we have an interview, like a little bit more, where I'm just like, who am I in business with?
When you say conservative, do you mean religious then?
I mean all of the above. So
okay.
Like, yeah.
Conservative in its literal definition, probably on all facets.
Yeah.
Well, because, I think, no rock music. I think of like Katy Perry saying how her parents were, because she grew up in such a strict Christian home. And
I would say very comparable. I've heard her story, and I actually think of Josh and I's living experiences probably as the way we were raised. It's got to be similar to that story, because I remember watching her documentary and relating a lot to some of that repression and and it's not everyone means well. We both have phenomenal parents, and it's just that is so Midwest, and it's we worked with a producer here, and he was from New York, and he's so great. He was writing with all these great people, and he had us in, and we were talking, and he said something, and I was just like, no, man, I didn't even know who that was. Some rock artist. And I said, I have no idea who that was until I moved here. And he was like, that is so Midwest. And he's like, and I only hear that literally from church kids from the Midwest, that like I wasn't allowed to listen to blank, insert the genre of music. And so I think if you were raised in a bigger city, maybe, I don't know, that it wasn't really that uncommon where I grew up to not be allowed to listen.
I literally, I would go and buy like a CD when I was in, middle school, high school, whatever. And my dad would come home from work, and he would come into my room, and we'd put it, and we'd sample each track on the CD. And he would tell me, you're allowed to listen to tracks 2, 3, 5, 9, 10, and 12.
And I can guarantee you all the other ones were his favorites.
I just had picture like where some kids have Playboys stuffed under their mattress. You had, AC/DC. Let there be rock.
This was Bono, though.
Well, that didn't happen till late high school and getting into college, but where I branched out. But it was pretty repressed musically, and it didn't even matter. Like, the lyrical content mattered, but my dad cared equally as much about how much distortion was in the guitars, and
which is so funny because I'm like his band dad, because I feel the same way. I'm like, no, like it's like, if you're going to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band. I'm like, if you're going to play in Nashville, there's got to be at least an acoustic in the band. And he's always just trying to like wail on something. And I'm like, no, dude, this is not your moment to like this is not your rock idol moment, man.
Although Keith Urban gets pretty rockin', right?
Oh, I know. It's now just become like an absolute like it's just a.
She likes to hold me down.
Oh yeah, I hold him down. I like to think in a good way. Help me help you.
Help me help you. Did your dad ever say what he thought would happen if you listened to that kind of music?
It wasn't. And I want to be clear. I love my parents.
Of course. Every parent has weird rules and stuff.
I'm very thankful for, I feel like I would have gone in a much different direction musically if I just had free reign. So I can see how it shaped where I went, and I'm thankful for it. It definitely stemmed a lot from religious views. That's a whole other tangent. I would have to like really think out how to.
That's a whole nother podcast just for Josh.
Yeah.
Because I know that you were raised in a super religious household, because we've had conversations about that before. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I'm always curious. I mean, I find all that stuff quite fascinating. And I often wonder when parents say, you can't, even though they're saying you can about a whole host of other things, that in and of itself is so tempting for a kid.
Oh, I think.
Oh, well, and it's funny looking back, because that guitar and amp that they bought me it was like a mini Strat and a really crappy little Squier amplifier. And I remember I was such a rule follower growing up. Like, I was trying to be the good kid. And I remember the first time I had a friend over, and I brought my amp down to show him like this new guitar I'd just gotten, whatever. And in the process of moving the amp, I guess I accidentally bumped some of the levels up. And when I turned it on, I had never made distortion come out of my amp before. And I accidentally started it was really crappy sounding distorted guitar, and I had both this horror in my head, like, oh my gosh, I'm breaking the rules, like whatever, and also this part of me that was like, this sounds really cool. I wonder how much of this I can get away with. And so my bedroom growing up was in the worst spot in the house, in the very middle of the house on above the kitchen. And so I would go up in my room, close the door, and turn on my amp and turn up just a little more distortion and see how much I could get away with. And inevitably, after 10 minutes or so, I'd hear my dad yelling from from down the stairs, like, not just turn it down, but Josh, turn the distortion down.
I mean, is that not so interesting?
It's great. This is why God created headphones, though, y'all.
Oh, I know. And right. And it's so interesting now too, because like we were both raised extremely conservative, and especially in comparison to, I don't think either of us knew until we got here the level of things we hadn't seen, because you have nothing to measure it against when your next neighbor is 10 miles away. It's like they're probably doing the same thing. And then if you were lucky and you got to go hang out with one of your friends in the suburbs, that's where you got your culture. And I mean, in their houses were a mile away. So like, it's just, there was nothing to measure it against as that not being normal.
Were your parents happy about both of you choosing to go into the musical course? Because your music is, I would say, one part country, one part rock, one part folk. It's got a great mix of all these different genres, because you're storytellers, which to me puts in the folk category, the singer-songwriter category.
Yeah.
But you get loud and fun and ferocious at times. And so how did your parents come to terms with that?
Well, I think on one part of it, for us, especially, like, we've rebranded and we're heading into our third year doing this together and doing the Hasting Co thing. And I made a joke yesterday at the listening room. I was like, weird band, weirder name. But like, I think really the whole idea, I was so blown away by Big and Rich, watching them when I was little, as like that being a stage show, and thinking, and you can even see it in artists like Taylor Swift now, and like country artists that really took the stage show thing. And it wasn't just, it was different than the George Strait that I went to a lot of George Strait concerts growing up, and the guitar and the one man band was awesome, but that just like, what I came from a theater background and a farming background, and I was just like, wouldn't it be cool if, and then Big and Rich came along, and I just remember being like, someone did that. Like, that was so interesting to me. And I remember my mom being like, not offended by them. And so I thought, okay, this is like, there's something to that. And something.
Wait, hold on. She was not offended by Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy?
No. And maybe it was because, in that point I was like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. That just didn't bother her. And I'm thinking, okay, there's the loophole. And I really do think I've never realized what Big and Rich did for me, that it's funny now, but I went to a Big and Rich show and a trailer choir show. And I don't really, it's only been in the last like year that I've realized the significance of what I saw. Like, the stage show was so undeniable that I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I wish every country artist just went out there. And then you see like Keith Urban, who's doing the same thing now, and he just comes out and it's just lights, camera, action, guitar, boom, everywhere. It's in your face, it's all over. And that was not the country. We went to a lot of concerts growing up, and really the most wild one I ever saw was Garth Brooks. And I can remember also being like, that's the type of performer I would want to be. And so there was enough wiggle room with my parents, I think, that was always gonna be the thing. But when you talk about our songs, like, I think Big and Rich is a great example of, whether you like them or not, they went with the song they liked. It didn't matter that they were going to release Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy and then a wedding song right after it. I think at the end of the day, they always say John Rich was like the song picker. He went through and he picked the songs he liked. And I think Josh and I both tried to really sit down and we're like, this song is undeniably who we are. Let's produce it the way that it's supposed to be produced. And we've gotten kickback for that, and it's all fun and games, and now it's working. So it can't be that off, but my parents have been really supportive, and yours have been unusually supportive.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, through college and then moving forward after that, I watched my parents start to mellow a little bit, and things that I would have never have been allowed to do growing up, then suddenly my dad was okay with sitting down and watching The Simpsons with me or something, like, just like random stuff. And so like over time that went in my, anytime I would do things that were more acoustic or mellowed out, he's always, he always liked that a little more, but yeah, they came to understand it a lot.
I also like to think that speaks to the sanity of our parents, because I really do. I think about this a lot, because it could have, like, we both had this very unique, what we believe is unique only now in Nashville. Like when we go into rides and stuff, I mean, you're seeing people like Hardy and even Luke Bryan, some of the early stuff where it was really this a similar type of writing. Obviously they were better at it, and we're trying to learn, and we're writing with all those writers now and just trying to figure out writing that small town experience, that farming, that conservative lifestyle into a song and still making it fun. But like what has made me feel like our parents were kind of sane in all of it is they let us be adults. They were very hard on us, I think, as kids, and pretty strict. But as we've grown into adults, they've let us become the exact adults we were supposed to become. And I mean, there are still things now where like my mom is genuinely, my best friend here in town, we write together all the time, and she's doing great now. Like Priscilla Block, like we're just wild. And my mom's always like, man, I don't know about posting that. Why is your tongue out in every picture? Or like, it's just, I don't know. It's like, there are times where she has a check and balance to it, but it's just like, I think she undeniably sees like there is a joy in me that has never existed. And part of that is I really think just being able to self-express and not worry that the person you care about the most, which in my lane is my parents and my family, like they're okay with it. And she's just like, I'm really glad to see you happy.
And that speaks a lot to both of your families, that to have an upbringing that is more structured and in a lot of ways stable because of that, and then allowing your kids to be the adults they are to become. I think that says a lot.
Yeah. I think that speaks, like I've always said, because you hear our friends that's like some of my friends back home, their moms and dads never let them transition into adults. I mean, they're still, iced out for the same things that they were iced out for at 17. And it's just like, at 25, you should be able to go into a room and maybe you don't know exactly who you are, but you should be allowed to you should have the freedom to be able to figure that out without your parents on your shoulder.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's room for having rules and things in a household, but also understanding that a child expresses in their own way and are going to become who they are, regardless of parental influence, because we are. A perfect example are siblings. My two older brothers, for example, are so different from me.
Mine too.
In some cases, astronomically so. It's crazy that we even came from the same places and grew up in the same family. Now they're a lot older than I am, so maybe that has something to do with it. But people are just they are becoming who they are, regardless of anything else.
There's a lot to, the nature versus nurture debate. And more times than not, I see the nature thing play out, especially here when you'll meet someone's parents and you're just like, wow, like did not see that coming. And you're just like, that must have been so inherent to who they were, like from infancy on. And the parent probably had to adjust as it. Like my mom always said, you can never, my mom worked in the public school system for years, and she said the biggest mistake she felt like parents make are parenting two children the same way. And the thing is that doesn't work. It will never work because you're working with two completely different brain systems. So the things that my brother would get in trouble for, I would never get in trouble for. Like that just wasn't what I was going to go out and do.
Yeah, teachers talk about that a lot as well. The kids in the class, the frustration with having such large classrooms is that nobody learns the same way exactly. And so you hear these gigantic classes, and it's very hard to teach 40 kids when they're learning in 40 different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insane.
Frustration. How did you two meet?
He was playing at a hotel bar. My parents were staying there. It was like there used to be Pix that was like
there's a Best Western near Music Row.
I think it's actually called the Best Western on Music Row to just go ahead and debunk that history.
But they used to have a little bar, just like a little dive bar inside with a stage until
I remember that bar.
Yeah. Do you remember why it closed?
No.
Wow, I don't even know this.
Because people who were staying at the Best Western on Music Row were complaining that there was music.
That feels on brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but when I first moved to Nashville, that was one of the places I played regularly.
And I snuck down and saw you, I think, and I found him on Facebook, creeped him, literally. I was like, wow, that guy's like good looking guy, best guitar player I've ever seen. Let's go. I was still really young, trying to figure it out. And you had obviously just, knew the ropes. You and Austin, like, knew a lot of people. I didn't know really anyone, but like you, Steve, the O'Sheas. I mean, my circle was very small in the beginning because I started working with Steve Walsh as soon as I got here. And so my circle was older. And so I never met, like, I never really had been a part of my peers or anyone. I didn't have any friends. I had mentors, I guess. And so that you guys were like my first friends in town.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but really some of I wasn't even living there yet. So it was just like I had people to run around with finally. And I knew eventually you were going to be an artist. It was just going to take you like a little while.
I was dead set I was not going to be an artist. I grew up milking cows and listening to country music. But I got away from it in college and I could not see myself like being a country artist. And long story short, I found my way back to it. And
long story short,
thought I could just get by just writing. And then she convinced me otherwise.
Well, I was like, why would you? No one's going to sing your songs. Love you. But look, it's becoming the artist writer world. And it really was at that point. You were seeing the like really big shift in Nashville of like, if you were not writing, like, if you were not an artist writing, it was harder to get in rooms. And I kept thinking, I'm like, why are you making it so hard on yourself to get in these rooms? I can show you exactly how. Let's be an artist. And suddenly everyone will write with you. And I wasn't wrong.
Not wrong.
But yeah, he kind of evened me out too. I'm crazy AF. And you were always like,
I'm not going to stop you.
Like you became the great balancer in the band. Like, he also was such a better musician than I was. So it's like, I had all these wacky ideas, like who I was influenced by. And, it was like just a lot of people I think the big stage show thing always attracted me. And I like quirky songs. Like I loved all the Brad Paisley early stuff. I think Check You for Ticks. It's just another way of saying something we've heard a million times, but like, I love that turn of a hook like that, where you're just like, I could not stop listening. And I wasn't even like, I was maybe a fan of the more progressive sound, but he had such a classic sound. I think for really like the time he came out, he was pretty throwback. But those lyrics, I just couldn't look away. And I was like, man, I want to write like that. But there's such a fine line of being able to be taken seriously writing the cheeky songs. Like the song has to be great or you're the laughing joke of Nashville. And so we had a long process of figuring out how to be like the band that was maybe a little bit cheeky, but like the craft was there. And we're still
all about craft. Yeah, craft is everything for Nashville. I think Brad wrote a lot of those songs with Scotty, right? Scotty Emmerich.
Yeah.
And
Kelly
genius.
Loveless.
Yeah, genius writers for sure. Absolutely fun writers.
Yeah, I think you have to, and it's absolutely essential. I tried to be someone that I wasn't. We were on a writing retreat with the two girls we write with the most, Priscilla Block and Sarah Jones. And I can't really say enough about them. I mean, Priscilla landed one of the biggest record deals in quarantine. Like, I think she will go down as someone that changed the game in the way that she approached reaching her fans in quarantine. And I really admire her, but that was very visible long before. And so we found those two, and they were willing to take the chances on these crazy ideas. And, you know, we just kept saying, like, it's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work. And so many times people had told us it won't work. Stop singing a song. Like, why would you sing a song called Thick Thighs Save Lives? Why would you sing a song called Brunch Drunk? And it was just like, and we heard that over and over again. It'll never work. You guys are the farm band. Stick to what you know. And it's like, well, I also know brunch. That's like a great poor man's getaway. If you like, brunch is a very affordable thing to do on a Saturday at your local Applebee's. Like, that's just not that's still what I know. And so it was almost like the more resistance we got, I think Priscilla and Sarah were so big about, like, go do it. Just be that band.
I'm so tired of cliche first dates, 5-star bars when I'd rather go to Applebee's. He's never heard a Carhartt, can't fix his own car, pays all the bills with his mom and daddy's credit card. He don't have to come for more money, and baby, it's all in his jeans. I want a man in a Canadian tuxedo, 505 Levi's kinda dress code, blue collar, blue jeans from head to toe. I want a man in a Canadian tuxedo.
We've had the most success we've ever had in a year, and it's come from just 100% gut reaction to things, and letting some of the not being able to go into an office and write, or not have a publisher maybe in your ear about, you know, how, because there's a danger in your publisher. They're great, but there's a danger in letting people structurally write the emotion out of a song. If not every line doesn't hit them, what we're finding, and I think again, to go back to Priscilla, because we're very separate entities, but she has single-handedly changed the course of our career, you know, like it became a thing. And so what she was doing was putting these songs on TikTok and letting people react to them. And what I think TikTok has done, I hate to say, but it has 100% highlighted the disconnect between the machine that is radio and the labels and the fan base, because you're seeing Morgan Wallen, and he's not saying anything new. The songs are brilliant, but these songs have been being written since the beginning of time, but radio has 100% disregarded them. And he's going on and he's actively letting his fans pick his next single and then watching it go to #1. And so I think COVID has been cool for bands like us that have that social following and that internet like connection, where you can just be like, hey, like, we were never going to release a song called Canadian Tuxedo, but every time we played it out, it was just like so massive. And so it was just like, okay, well, that's the answer. It's not that hard. It's like, your ultimate goal at the end of the day is entertainment. You can write a million songs for you all day long, and you can sing them to yourselves, and I can be fulfilled. That doesn't have to be how I make my living, like only serving myself. Like, the whole idea, I think that music in a lot of ways is a selfless act. You're not going to get rich right away. You're certainly going to work.
If ever.
If ever. You're right. So in some ways you have to like have something else in it. And for me, it's giving away. And if you could, you know, we were opening for Jake Owen and watching the song we wrote called SPF, and just people's like, just their whole demeanor in the crowd shifted after that song, and they were happy and they were drinking. And it's just like, what if the answer is just that easy? And
it's definitely an arc in Nashville of people coming to town and seeing what is working for others and thinking, okay, I'm going to adjust to them. And then if they're following the arc the way I think it naturally occurs, they come back to themselves and realize that their own voice is the voice that is the one they should be doing and not anyone else's.
And you're going to sing the sad songs. Josh and I go in all the time and write the sad songs. But then maybe that's not the answer right now for us. And maybe that's, like maybe one will come along and it'll just be like, boom, that has to be said. We have to say this. But we haven't been there in a while. And we spent a lot of the last 2 years pretty sad. And I don't think either of us are like ready to go cut the story that just happened.
Let's talk about that. The past 2 years for you two have been intense, to say the least. Josh, do you want to start and talk about what the past 2 years have been like?
It started with you, but like I guess going back, like the other aspects of my growing up was that my dad had cancer for almost 30 years. He when I was 4, he was diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia, and I've spent a lot of my childhood in hospitals and going to the Mayo Clinic and National Institute of Health in Maryland and all over trying experimental chemos. And I was homeschooled a lot of my life. So my parents would turn those trips into like, let's visit all the museums, or while dad's out getting chemo, let's go to Washington, D.C. and, explore or whatever. But yeah, it was definitely a huge part of my growing up. But last May, right around Memorial Day, he finally passed from complications from that. And but it was weird timing because obviously
6 months before that, I was home visiting. Just it was like a time like any other. It was June, and I was home with a guy I was seeing at the time, and we were at his family reunion. And my mom and I are super, super close. My mom and we all are. I have one brother, and the 4 of us are thick as thieves. And again, we were raised in the middle of nowhere. That we had each other, and we all had really great relationships. My parents, I never really knew unhealthy love, I guess, until I was out in the bigger world. And my parents just didn't have that. We had little arguments, but we just did not have, we had a very peaceful household. And so everyone was really close and very communicative, and especially with texting, and I was just at a family reunion, and I just remember I very distinctly remember texting my mom about a pair of shoes that Casey Musgraves was wearing on a magazine, and just thinking those are so lit. And normally I knew she was going out to dinner with my dad and some of her friends, but I didn't hear back for a while. And then my brother texted me. He's like, "Hey, have you heard from mom and dad?" And, I text dad, and I was like, that's kind of weird, but you kind of put it off, and you're like, whatever, they're doing whatever they're doing. And then my uncle called me I had missed a couple of calls from my uncle, and I don't know why, but I just knew then something really bad had happened. I had a sense of dread, and my uncle called me, and the worst thing about it is it's nothing like on a TV thing. They just said, "I need you to come to grandma's right now. There's been an accident," and I mean, it makes you sick to your stomach today thinking about it. It's like, I asked, did someone die? And no one could answer that. And that answer was an answer, when no answer is your answer. And I just didn't know who. And I just remember driving to my grandma's, being sick on the way, just this whole thing. And my dad had passed in the accident. And then we would later go on to find out, at the time they had thought my mom had passed, but they were, and they just didn't know the status. So that was part of the reason that they were like, just get there, just figure it out. And we got to the hospital, and I think they had revived her 3 times. And on the 3rd time, they got a pulse back. I think the surgeon that was there, it wasn't even supposed to be there that night. He massaged her heart, which is just pretty unheard of nowadays with the way that from what I understand, the regulations in hospitals. So it was sort of a miracle story, right place, right time. And my mom knew to stay awake, try to stay conscious. And she had known that my dad, she felt pretty sure my dad had passed. She like felt very sure of that from the beginning. And so she knew she just did not want to orphan her children. And she talked about that over and over again. And we spent a year in the hospital. You know, she'll never walk normal again. She's starting to walk some. It's been like, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, just the year at the hospital. And for the longest time, it was touch and go. She was going to die. She wasn't going to die. She was going to die. And then she wasn't, and she was not going to have any, frontal brain use. There were just all these different things that they just didn't know. And it's crazy because she 100% is my mom still. And that's like pretty unheard of when someone codes like that. So there were definitely some miracles, but it definitely put a hold on any big dreams that we had. It put a hold on everything you think. It has not been the easiest year. I got sober after it. I mean, it was just like such a whirlwind of crazy. Like and between him, it was just such a mess between the two things.
What made you decide to get sober?
I think I just, alcohol it started being in the driver's seat, and it started being the thing that I went to. I don't mean literally, like it just became the thing that was like, that's easier than dealing with. And staying here became a coping mechanism, not going home. And I only realized that recently, that I've used that as sort of a coping mechanism. If I'm here and, we've had this great year as songwriters, which no one ever. This was an easier place to hide than to deal with. My mom's still very ill. My grandparent, I lost my grandfather right after, and my uncle, who was my mother's really significant male figure in her life during that time period. And so like, this was a good place to just disappear and be whoever I wanted to be, not necessarily who I was. And alcohol just became the medicine, it just was so out of control, and it was alone more than it was ever with people. And that is where I think it gets, everything I read is like, if you think you might have a problem, you definitely have a problem. So, and I think that's true of anything. If you're like, do I struggle with this? You're probably struggling with it. And it just is, my life just runs so much better without it. I think, unfortunately, you watch it play out all the time in Nashville with songwriters. And it is unfortunately like the one thing that everyone has, or a lot of people have in common. And it's just like, man, if you already know you're so high risk just by being a songwriter, like the percentage goes way up. It just seems unnecessary. And I hope to continue on that path, but it really is like relearning a way of life, especially living here. I ironically do better at bars. I'm good when there's people around, but when I have downtime, that's when the demons, I'm like, holy shit, the last 2 years, like, I cannot even believe it happened.
That's a lot. It's a lot to take on. Do you go to a program, or are you doing it on your own?
I've been right now doing it on my own. I do see a therapist. I've done it, the AA thing. I like it. I believe in it. I'm not opposed to it. Would probably do if I felt shaky. Like I've not stuck to that program, I guess, the way some people do, but I definitely use it. I use podcasts. I use really anything that makes me feel not crazy is a good thing. And I've also really learned to lean into being really uncomfortable. And that is something that I think I'm genuinely an uncomfortable person. Like, I don't like how clothes fit. I'm uncomfortable all the time. And emotionally, that became unacceptable because, we live in America and you should feel great all the time. And I think there's just had to be some leaning in to not being happy 100% of the time.
How's that going? Are you getting more comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Yeah, we've had weird blessings this year. Like, I don't know what it would have been like had Priscilla not broke, had we not. I mean, we're going to have our first major label cut in. This is all new, you know, and genuinely being like the relevant writer in the room, that has never been our experience ever. And so you have this, and that's not going to last long. You know, this town moves so fast, like it's a moment. And so like, I can see how things have to happen the way that they do. I don't know that Priscilla, Sarah, Josh, and I would have been the level of friends we are had the accident and the death not. I mean, it brought us all together. They were our people here. And so that has led to some of the most vulnerable songwriting, which has led to the best songs, which have led to furthering your career. And so some of it's been bearable only because I think, you know, the Lord like only puts on you as much as you can handle. And there's always been like this thread of hope for us through all of it. Like we'll get one big bad blow or a few or 15, but there's this like undeniable gold thread of hope. Like we'll get some big, huge break that it's like, okay, this person heard this, so, you know, send that song there. And it's just, I think those things have helped, because you can't just be uncomfortable and unhappy. Like you know, hope is a big thing and it's a dangerous thing, but we've had a lot of hope.
Well, Josh, what about you? How have you dealt with grief? It's such a different situation for Kate, you know, losing someone suddenly, and for you, this long process of having to try and come to terms with something that nobody comes to terms with, really.
Yeah, sorry.
We've talked about this a lot.
I'm trying really hard not to get emotional.
Lots of people have been emotional on the show. I have cried so many times on this show.
All right, well, not making any promises one way or another. I remember when my dad was dying and trying to figure out how, how to deal with it. I remember calling a friend who I hadn't talked to in probably a good year or two, but I knew his dad had passed a few years before. I remember asking him, how'd you deal with it? What would you recommend? And he said, say everything you need to say. You've got the time, you know it's coming. So don't hold anything back and have every conversation you need to. And sorry. I think that just really, that helped tremendously. It was rough towards the end because my dad wasn't mentally there as things started progressing more quickly, because he had stopped treatment and stopped the things, because they had given him, you know, a month or two to live. And yeah. But so conversations that would have taken, 15 minutes took an hour. And so it was drawn out and painful. And I remember Kate and I talking at the time, comparing, like, what would you rather have, like, this long drawn out pain, or having it happen suddenly and not knowing it's coming. And there's a certain, it's two kinds of hell. And you lose either way. But,
yeah. We've talked about that a ton. I don't know that there's, they both have their downfalls and they both have their perks. It's so bizarre. Like, you hate to say perks, but there's perks to, like, sudden grief that, as I didn't live my whole life in hospitals. So that's something I think about a lot. Like, maybe that's the blessing. He got to say things I didn't get to say. So there's just so many catch-alls that we very uniquely have gotten to go through together in our revolving door of significant others. Like, it's God bless.
I think a lot of people, you bring up significant others, and it is, I think, and I talk about this a lot on the show, is it's very hard for people, and you talked about leaning in, it's very hard for people to lean into death, especially in America. We have a very weird relationship with death and mortality. Oh. And that leaning in experience is, I find it an honor personally to be with somebody, if you're lucky enough to be with them in those final days or weeks or months, because it's got to be terrifying. I mean, it's scary for us to watch somebody we love go, but imagine that even for people who are religious or believe that they are going somewhere, it's still scary. Nobody wants to go, even right. Honestly, people who have attempted suicide and failed talk about in those moments, they're like, oh crap, what have I done? That, that when the reality of what it means comes into the brain for many people, they're like, nope. I remember my uncle was passing and in the time before he died, and all the emotions he went through, he was angry, he was happy, remembering all these memories. He was so sad. He was excited to see his wife, who had passed just before him by a couple of years. There were all these things going on. And Josh, when you said, say everything there is to say, and we do, I mean, like Kate, I'm sure your father knows and knew how much you love him, especially in such a tight family. And same for you, Josh. And it's just like this idea that we have plenty of time to wait to tell people, but we don't, because nobody knows. None of us know. And for some, it's this inexorable feeling of, the death is way over there. And for others, it's, things turn on a dime. We have to, as best we can, be present to each other.
There's this line in this Fun song, Fun with the period, the band, and he says, like, I'm going to paraphrase it, but he's like, he talked about how all their neighbors and wives would someday die, but he likes to think he can escape it all to make up for the times he's been cheated on. And I think America has that mentality of, so much has already happened to me that this, like, death does not apply, or that sudden death doesn't apply, sudden tragedy. Because I think we literally live where you're like, we have the it could never happen to me mentality in America more than maybe any other country. And we're so out of touch with, like, the fragility of being alive. And
emotions. And the feeling of loving each other.
And we are so entitled, and I bring up that line because he's saying, I feel like I deserve to not have to live through that. And that is such America's, like, belief system. Like, because I have done all of these things, then this shall never happen to me. And that's just unfortunately not the case. Yeah, it's been a ride.
I'm glad that you have each other for that too. Yeah, Josh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say all that to say that's why we sing happy songs now.
Yeah, that's why we get brunch drunk. I mean,
yeah, no, I get that for sure. What have you learned personally about yourselves while dealing through this concept of mortality? How has it reflected back in how you live your lives now, besides writing fun songs?
Right. For me, one of the biggest struggles, I'll go with the struggle because this is what I've learned about my weak points. I am deathly afraid of people leaving. I lost a great relationship during the time of the grief after my father, because my tendency became, and maybe my tendency my whole life has been to push away. I knew I never wanted to get married young. So there was just never this hurry or this, like, desire for romantic connection. And even so, like, friendships, there would be such a wall. Once you're in, but, like, they're just very, very arm's length. And I have learned in the relationship I'm in now, the danger that you put yourself in by allowing that tragedy to dictate my level of vulnerability. And that has been a big thing every day that I have to restructure in my brain. Like today, I will allow someone to hurt me. I can still walk away from it, but I'm going to allow them far enough in that there's a little bit of danger there. And for a while after the accident, there was absolutely no give to that. Like there was like, I just have no, I really struggle with vulnerability because in my mind, it's not even you leaving, it's that I think you might die, which is very strange. And if you leave, sometimes it feels the same as dying. I think that we've all been through relationships or the end of relationships, friendships, or romantic, where you think literally you are going to die. That heartache is the same as losing. I have realized that anxiety, that horrible, sick to your stomach, vomiting on the edge of your seat feeling. I mean, there is no difference for me between that loss of a romantic or friendship than there was with my dad. It's all that sick, same suffering feeling. And so I wonder how long I've lived, avoiding that since the accident so that I haven't gotten to experience some of maybe the connections I would have made. So for me, it's just like absolutely being alive and choosing to be alive each day without that fear constantly looming over my head.
Yeah. I think for me, the first thing that whole experience gave me was I got a lot closer with my family. It ended up mending some relationships and just helping make us understand each other a little better. I realized that my sister and I, being 2 years apart, had experienced my dad's illness growing up completely differently because of how old we were when he first got sick and how much we were, because I remember being, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old and having my mom, ask me to be careful what I did when my dad got home from chemo and like try to be on my best behavior because, chemo would affect his mood and things like that. And that's a very formative, I could go on forever on how that affected me and in good and bad ways. But, I always knew in the back of my head growing up that my dad, like who my dad was when he was tired and lethargic and, kind of irritable, wasn't who he actually was. That was the chemo. That was whatever. My sister, it turns out, was too young to understand that there was a difference. Just thought that over the years, my dad just mellowed out and was a little better. But we had never had those discussions before, and so that's been really good for our family. Man, other than that, just being better about making the most of my time, valuing connection a little more. I don't know. I think I'm still figuring it out a little bit.
Sure.
Sometimes I think we both struggle with happy. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. I definitely don't want to speak for you. Like, because we are a duo, but we both have very different thoughts on life. I mean, like I'm going to see how late I can stay up tonight and Josh is going to see how quickly he could make it to bed. Like, that's just who we are. And like, but something I noticed about both of us, and like just reading before we did this, I was reading through some of our text messages and just like questioning our interactions. And we do treat each other with a lot more respect than we used to. I think like sometimes you don't like the clerical things that go into being and like running your own business, and you have stepped up to that. I don't like being nice when something doesn't, like, not even nice, just I'm flippant. Like, I'm just very like, all right, on to the next one. You didn't do it right. Let's go. And it's just like, that's not how you treat someone that's that significant in your life. But we struggle with happiness, like these things. And I hope we get to do the podcast later on, because we've got so many cool things that are like in the works that really are a testament to the dumb slogans they tell you in Nashville, like find your crew, wait it out 7 years. Like it's all been exactly what they said. And it could not have happened any different, but we'll get these like things. And it's been, for right now, the big focus has been Priscilla and those songs. And we'll get this, like, we got our first major label cut and the opportunity to go in and watch it be recorded in a, Blackbird studio. I mean, we're trash. Like, we haven't been in Blackbird, like this was a true honor. This was like, we're on a beer budget. We were hanging on a champagne dime that day. And like, we were both so confused. Like the texts sound confusing. We're like, wow, that is cool. Like it was just like,
oh, I get it. When I got my Reba cut, when I opened the email and I looked, I thought somebody was punking me. Honestly, I was like, oh, funny, haha. And I shut my computer and then I opened it again and I went, oh, wait, this is real. What? Yeah, right. It is very surreal to have a moment like that.
And it's even more surreal after living in that darkness for 2 years, because you're just like, I don't know. You just don't, you expect the worst despite knowing that that's not what you should be asking out of life. It's just such a human tendency to be like, that hurt so bad. That must be what it's going to be like.
Yeah. You said something about being vulnerable to pain. And I mean, I think for a lot of us, being vulnerable to joy, it's almost scarier to wrap your head around joy than it is because most of us know struggle. It's to whatever extent it is, we get it. And it's joy that is like, wow, what is that? That freaks us out.
I've always thought, and I think about this all the time, that hope is the most dangerous. Is hope an emotion or a, usually you and I are pretty good on literary terms, but
is it an emotion or a state of being? Or
I think it's all those things.
But having hope is so dangerous. And I think back to knowing that as young as 17, when I was with the same boy all through high school, and I ended it and it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. And I figured we would get back together. And I think of how dangerous that hope was for me and how dangerously it affected my life because of how the actions that I took based on that sliver of hope. And so hope is like very beautiful and it's something you want in your life, but it's also very dangerous. Like having hope is scary. Like it might, because it doesn't mean you win. You just think you might. And so I've been fascinated since the death of the thought of hope and the danger in it, the danger and the beauty. Like it's this like double-sided coin that you've really got to look at. And you're like, you want it, but it's also very dangerous.
It's almost like something it matters where you invest your hope.
Yeah.
And it very much is almost like currency.
Yeah.
And there's nothing inherently wrong with money, but if you obsess over it or invest in the wrong thing, it becomes dangerous.
I will say the other great thing that has come out of this that, we have been in more meetings in the last 2 months than we've been in 5 years. And the thing that you cannot shake us on is just about anything. If I don't know you and we're having like a first meeting and we're starting to talk, I don't get nervous about deals anymore. I don't get nervous about what you think of me anymore because I'm telling you, you cannot do anything worse to me than 2 years ago to this time frame. And it's just, that has been something I will thank my dad for daily, because there is like this brazenness to being like, no, I promise you I was only raised on country music. You're wrong. And if you don't see that, we probably shouldn't work together. And that's okay, because the next person will understand. And if they don't, I don't really care. it just has been, I feel like there's a fearlessness in you and I now that did not exist before.
That's also an honoring, right? You're honoring who you are. And I think learning to honor oneself it's a slow, tumultuous mountain climb.
Yes.
But when you get there, it makes all the difference in the world. It changes everything. It changes how you interact with your family, with lovers and friends and worker people and bosses and all that stuff. And strangers.
It changes how you receive your Amazon box. I'm not kidding you. I treat people so different now than I did. And someone said the first thing that they look for in a significant other, and I heard it in 2 different ways in the same week. And then that's when God's trying to, whatever you believe in is trying to really express something to you. And I heard someone say that one of the first things they look for when they're looking for a significant other is the way that they treat service workers.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
And I was like, I have always thought that to be like, I've always known that, but it's just like, that's so important. Why do we not think of that?
That's so big for me. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you can tell a lot about a person for sure.
Yeah.
And honestly, just how they, in general, if they move through their life with a less than, more than attitude, it's a big red flag.
It's all about how you handle stress, truly. Or something going the way that you are not necessarily pleased of it going. People are, wow, that's a song for another time.
And it's about knowing too, I think, we all are on our own journey, and it's hard once you start to realize certain things about yourself and the world, how you operate in the world at large. It's easy to go, oh, you're acting this way, and so and not fostering growth in someone else, which is also a part of it. You shining, to choose the cheesiest metaphor, you shining your light so that others may know light over their own darkness. And we can't expect anyone to be anywhere other than where they are. Yeah. But if we hold on to our own self, it's a reflect. We can't help but reflect, right? That's just what light does.
Yeah.
And so that's a tricky thing too, is to, even though I say, oh, if you treat a server poorly, there's no way you get a second date, but also have compassion for that person as to why they're treating that person.
What happened to you?
Or just how do you feel about yourself that you need to feel like someone else is less than you? Because in real life, right, if you were to dig into that, it's because they feel less than.
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is it that you two never dated? I know everybody asks you that. You dated for like a hot second, right?
No, we went on a couple dates. It was just a flop rat.
Nothing ever happened beside an awkward side hug in a park.
Which we will write at some point.
That's
like maybe
the awkward side hug.
Title, yeah, because you know you're getting ghosted if you get the side hug.
That is so funny.
Well, okay. I just kept hitting him up like, you're gonna play guitar, love you.
When you each take new boyfriends and girlfriends and things, are you like, what are you doing, or do you stay out of each other's love lives?
I think we have a healthy. We didn't used to.
It's gotten a lot healthier over the years. It's definitely hard. I'm under no illusion that somehow, this is a normal situation. So, like being in a super close friendship and business relationship with someone of the opposite sex and trying to date and bring someone else into that and have them be fully understanding of that is a tall order.
We both had that go the wrong way. Well, I mean, clearly every time.
But we've had I've had relationships that were really not understanding and would never stop thinking that something was going on.
You've had one that was scary, Larry. We are blessed.
But I don't know.
You two feel like brother and sister to me, though. Your energy, having spent a lot of time around each other, the way you talk with each other and love each other, it feels more, excuse me, it feels like a deep family bond. like brothers and
Oh,
sisters.
that's
Yeah.
exact. I think of him literally. I love him the way that I love my brother. And I think the dad thing again, it's so interestingly, like, there can be no way I don't believe in accidents after that. Like, that we would have been in this journey, that we would have stuck with it as long as we did, that we would have created the name change right in time for that to happen. I mean, we were recording parts of our first single on cell phone notes and sending it to our producer in LA because we were in a hospital. So it was just like, there were things that were just so chaotic. And it's like, that has helped me understand too, like, I don't date a man if he does not accept Josh. That already tells me everything I need to know about that man. Like, if you're threatened by that, you don't understand me at all. So it's just move along. Like, I mean, the guy I'm seeing now, he's like unusually understand, like, he just loves Josh. Like, he always tells Josh, love ya, at the end of the call, because that's what I'll say. And it's just like, I have a lot of respect for him as a man, whether we end up married or we date for a few months. That I have a lot of respect for him as a man, because he's able to be like, okay, like, you know, she is enough. What she says is enough, and I trust her. And what he says is enough, and I trust him. And I think that if someone doesn't understand or trust your character, this is a really quick way to vet it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And other side of the coin, when her parents were in the accident, I was dating someone who got upset that I was driving up to Ohio so much to see her family.
Keep in mind, we weren't even seeing each other because, like, the room was so quarantined. He was just hanging out in the, like, there were hundreds of people in the waiting room. There was never like me and you hanging out.
Yeah, I might be able to, you know, I might be up there for 4, 5, 6 days, and I might be able to see her mom in the room once or twice while I was there for 5 minutes. And I'd see Kate occasionally.
Yeah.
But the community up there, like, their family has accepted me as part of the family. Her dad was like a father figure to me. Her mom calls me her other Josh, since Kate's brother's name is Josh. Like,
my mom calls you more than she calls me. She's like, what's Josh doing today? I'm like, I don't. So
it was just, there was no second thought. Like, as soon as things happened, it was like, I'm canceling every plan I had. I'm like, this is where I have to be. And again, if someone doesn't get that dynamic, you know, bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Upgrade.
Absolutely. How can people find you? What's the best way to find y'all?
Well, we're always in camos. They'll never find us.
We're still trying to find ourselves. So.
Yeah. Can you help us with this? No, everything is at Hasting Co. It's HASTING ANDCO. There is no S on the end of Hasting. And we went with that name because we literally saw something in Co. on an old feed bag cleaning out my dad's barn. We thought, what a concept. And honestly, it's funny because so many people told us not to do it. But now after shows, so many people will be like, I remember you guys because of your name.
I thought you were a clothing company.
Yeah, that's also, very common because we have a lot of merch. But yeah, and then our website is Hasting Co, HASTINGCO.com. And if people message us, like, we're very, very close to our fans. Like, you know, if someone sends us a message, we're going to message you back. We want to hang out. Like, we travel not as much, but we're getting slowly, you know, back into the regular rhythm of things. And I assume with what's going on with Priscilla, we're going to probably wait to release until spring. So we won't have anything new, but we're definitely going to put everybody on the journey with us recording that song. It's going to be, we've been waiting to release the SPF sunscreen song forever, and it's been on hold multiple times. And it's just, the life of that song has always been so very unknown. And finally, I think it's ours. We think it's ours. And so we would love to have everybody on the journey kind of following along with that. And also just, it's cool to see Priscilla with some of the songs that we've written. Just, we're showcasing a lot of what she's doing, because as a songwriter, that's a great honor to watch an artist blow up like that. That's, I mean, like, wow. And
I'll put her info on the link page as well.
Yeah.
so people can
And
find
as a woman that sings songs about thick thighs, like, you know, I'm really loving that we're getting to be a part of she's unique in the movement towards women, because she's not your cookie cutter mold. She's not going to sing the songs maybe that the label wanted her to sing, and it's working. And so I think we're just as proud of that project right now. It's, you know, as we are what we're doing, and it's really been a pleasure.
Yay! And when you guys come to California, you have to make sure I know so that we can hang out, because I miss y'all.
Oh, I have a list of people that I have to see in LA this year. Like, it's happening, because our producer, Tyler Smith, he lives in LA, and it's going to happen.
Okay,
and we miss you, and you're a great interviewer.
Oh, thanks.
You ask the weird questions, which I like, and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to have to dig for this.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I love you both, and I'm really proud of you, and I'm excited to see you. And
Yes.
I miss you, but I don't miss Nashville so much, because I like the weather here much better.
We miss your weather. We will also be there for your weather. It will be 5 days of non-depression.
Yeah, exactly. I love you guys so much.
Love you too. Have the best
Thank
holiday.
you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Merry Christmas.
You too. See
Bye.
you soon.
Bye. Bye, guys. Thank you for listening, everybody. Bye. Rate and review Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.